Have you ever thought about making your own podcast? Okay, so you have your script. You ready to record? So now what? Anchor, a podcasting platform, can come to your rescue. I use it for my podcasts because of the ease of having Anchor distribute my episodes on other podcasting platforms, such as Spotify and Apple Podcast. It's a free platform with its own creation tools that make it easy for you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And the best part? You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Now that's a good deal. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Anchor.fm is everything you need to make a podcast, all in one place. And now, on with the show. Within a created universe, there are different strands that can both connect and tangle within each other. How characters are developed, their behaviours, the history behind a made-up world that can reflect certain aspects of ours, and moral of a story that essentially, in this case, saves the people around the main protagonist. This is 2 takes, and this is one shot, a 2-episode analysis of Death Stranding. Episode 2, The Journey West. For those who have not played the game or are in the process of doing so, rest assured this podcast is about the world within Death Stranding, rather than the storyline. But be warned, spoilers might happen. If you recall, the last thing explained in the earlier episode were the interesting connections between the different meanings of the word strand, stranded, and stranding within the universe of Death Stranding. How strand is a metaphor for the connection between wires of a rope, holding things together. How stranded is when a soul is lost between 2 worlds, and how stranding is the act of being washed up on the shore of a beach. It's all connected together in a circle, with a cherry on top being that strand also means beach in some Nordic languages. It was meant to be. But what does this have to do with journeying west? The beach is a place of limbo, outside of time, a connected place between worlds. Therefore a journey is meant to happen between life and death. And like Sam on his literal walking journey throughout America, the dead have to do the same. And the ideology that Kojima has used throughout the game is a religious influence of Egyptians and their belief on the afterlife. The ancient Egyptians believed that each person was made up of 5 distinct parts: the ark, the ba or ha, the ka, the name, and the shadow. Only some of these are relevant to the game, but learning all 5 will give a better understanding of their beliefs as a whole. So let's begin. The shadow was the 5th part of the person, and was the shadow of a person reflected by the sun. By no means was it the evil in the body or the personality, but rather a powerful, always present protector. It is also a representation of a figure of death, to which this can be referenced to Philip Pullman's 3rd book of his Dark Materials, and in some cases it can represent the impact a person had on Earth. This is interesting, as this reference also theoretically represent the BTs in a strange way. Their embodiment is always like a shadow upon the earth, and they are always present, representing the figurative personification of death in the land of the living. However, like a theory, only some parts of it can be true. BTs are considered dangerous, and in the concept of Egyptians and the afterlife, a person's shadow is by no means dangerous. The name, or Ren, is a concrete establishment of who you are in the afterlife. The Egyptians took this very seriously, placing naming plaques for each tomb. If something happened to your preserved body, or if your name was not written down somewhere, the other aspects of a person, such as the ba-ha or the ka, would get lost, and you would disappear forever. Naming someone and understanding that importance because of the afterlife, and perhaps the importance of the namesake itself, has that happening within Death Stranding by the interesting and somewhat obvious names given to each of the characters and the companies within the world. Some examples are Hartman, unique heart condition, and Deadman, the New Age Frankenstein's monster made real. Understanding this connection within this ideology makes it more precious and unique for each character to choose to name themselves through their experiences. The ba or ha was your personality, whatever made each person unique. That was not physical. Your humour, your charm, your warmth, basically yourself. This was represented as a human-headed bird that left the body when the person died. The face of the Ba or Ha was the exact likeness of the deceased person. Now this is where the references from these beliefs come into Death Stranding more and more. The Ka is unique in everyone. It is a life force within a person, and when they died, the Ka lived on. The ancient Egyptians believed that your soul split into two parts after you died. One part, the Ba or Ha, flew off every morning to keep watch on your living family. The other part, the Ka, flew happily off to enjoy life in the afterlife. At night, both the Ba or Ha and the Ka returned home to your tomb to rest up for the next day. The physical body, or the ark, was most often used to mean a complete person, whether living or dead. While living, the ark was composed of all 5 elements I have touched upon. However, when dead, the ark was referred to the union of the Ba or Ha and the Ka, to which we understand happened every night. But it is most interesting is how the Ka would have to travel west, referencing the land of the dead, and return to visit their Ba or Ha, the uniqueness of a human if they recognized it. This aspect of the Ba or Ha having to be recognizable is because of the bird-like figure and the head being the exact likeness in your human face. The spirit must find the right body. It can be said that sometimes we find ourselves being torn to do many things at once. It seems the Egyptians took this to happen even after death, of looking after those we care about, or even checking in, and to do what we want to do, having to do it all over again the next day, much like the characters and their hardships within the Death Stranding, such as Mama and her baby. But like I said, no spoilers, or less anyway. Let's just say we still have a lot to do, according to Egyptians, within our lifetime and after it. This journey for the dead, of going west, is essentially happening in the living too, for Sam to go west to connect people onto the chiral network. So what is happening between the worlds is almost like a mirror, the concept of travelling, of a journey which will impact those around you. And so, because we understand the spectral world that is Death Stranding, where does that leave the ones living it? Let's take a look. On the surface, we have many types of people that are out on the world of Death Stranding, either simply surviving, trying to make something out of their lives, or stealing things to make something of theirs. I will explain. It must be noted that the world you see in the game is because of terrorist attacks that people did to each other, rather than a Death Stranding. This is the fault of those now long gone. And amazingly, those that have survived have seen this coming miles away, and they are called preppers. Long ago, preppers decided that they couldn't trust their nation to be there for them anymore, and so built their own shelters and stockpiled it with full of supplies in preparation for the worst. And then the worst came. The world they now know had made their shelters their permanent homes. They had prepared for the worst, but they had not prepared to live there forever, and because of this outcome, they do suffer psychologically. Because of the result of separation and isolation, and the dangers of going outside, people are not keen to make physical contact with each other, because of the collective aversion of constant fear. And so, supplements of oxytocin were created for those who want it. It is the hormone the body releases when we touch each other, for example, a mother's bond with her child when they hold them. They needed to feel less stressed out and insecure, and I don't blame them, what with death constantly at your doorstep. Another way to elevate stress is through a like. This is registered throughout the game and triggers a rush of oxytocin, stemming from the theory from the sense of feeling acknowledged, even if you couldn't see that person you are interacting with. Still felt like they were accepting you, praising you for your work. And so, when Sam does a delivery, he is praised by these likes, which in turn he can use for other games leaving useful objects or finishing a job he could not finish. There's a subtle connection for gamers, in a game meant to connect people together. And who delivers these medicines to the preppers? The couriers. The couriers, like Sam, could be freelance, or be part of another organisation such as Fragile Express or Bridges. Bridges is a company that formed to connect the Fractured Society of United Cities of America, the UCA. Notice how it's cities, rather than states. There have been a lot of void-outs, with the communication coming to a halt between the UCA and the rest of the world, placing the rest of the world as either dead or in the dark about each other. Within the company of Bridges, there are different units that contribute towards the everyday within its cities. This can be distinguished between the colour of each suit that our operative wears. There is the corpse disposal team, orange, medicine and treatment, red, security, black, and delivery couriers in blue, hence why Sam wears blue throughout the game. But why human couriers? Well, there are two reasons. One is connected to rain, which I will get to later, and the other is because of mules. But a little history first. AI managed deliveries carried out by drones were the regular way until there were cases dubbed drone syndrome, which made people more isolated and struggled with the concept of leaving everything to the machine and nothing for the regular man. This was made worse by the constant need of the oxytocin and the hormonal imbalance, and so human porters or couriers came back into the picture. All of the people that were put out of work because of the AI were called upon again to work. They were then convinced that society couldn't survive without them and brought about a new disorder called delivery dependence syndrome. It is a degenerative condition that causes porters to become solely dependent on the high of delivering cargo, to the point of forcibly stealing and delivering the cargo of other deliverymen. And because of those porters developing this condition, they were called mules. In a way, those mules can be categorized as oxytocin addicts, social animals at the mercy of validation. But what is noticed as the strangers of the syndrome is that, on the surface, it actually sounds really helpful for the other porters. But in the reality of the game, what mules essentially do is stash stolen cargo in their postboxes in their camps, or any postbox is hidden nearby, which is very unhelpful. And the rain? Yes, in this world, the rain is toxic. Called Timefall since its discovery and first recording when the Death Stranding occurred. It has this name because of it essentially accelerating the passage of time for the objects and organisms it touches, then immediately turns to ordinary water having done so. Some have theorized that the process is the concept of stealing time. There is a theory that antimatter was all around us, but we were not made aware of it until the Death Stranding, and that gamma radiation generated by lightning strikes can trigger the formation of positrons. The particles can be detected inside regular rain clouds. It goes further to suggest that beryllium, when excited by gamma radiation, could exacerbate minute distortions in space, that time is somehow loosening the seams, the strands, that connect each person to their personal beach. However, more likely is the theory that timefall mixed with beryllium descends to the ground below makes the place in which it's happening to be more connected to the beach, explaining the BTs that appear in areas prone to timefall. So, on the surface, we have mules, timefall, and BTs. There is a contradiction of the use of beryllium for the chiral network, with a prolonged exposure becoming like a radiation or contamination that can lead to many problems. People exposed to the beryllium for long periods of time have their mental and physical health impacted. It can impair immune response, contribute to heart failure, alter hormonal balance inducing stress, and most commonly result in poor sleep due to vivid nightmares. These hormonal imbalances frequently lead to heightened destructive impulses towards others and themselves, hence the need of oxytocin and to stay inside. However, those dominated by these urges are named homo demons. Much like the Homo sapien, it is an adaptation of the Latin madmen, or, in a word, terrorists. They seek to maintain the independence of a certain city within the game storyline and oppose the UCA, not being afraid to slaughter the residents of towns and for engineering void-outs as a means of creating and maintaining fear throughout the alliances of UCA. But what if you were immune or resistant to the contamination? Then you are in another class altogether. Someone like Sam, who you discover straight away has DOOMS, a chiral allergy resulting in tears. DOOMS sufferers are more connected with and are more aware of the nature of the beach. All DOOMS sufferers experience distressing apocalyptic nightmares, which can cause mental illness. All in all, DOOMS sufferers are more resistant to beryllium exposure, but they are not immune. There is more on this subject, however, it is connected to the main storyline, therefore you must find it for yourself in playing the game. There is more than one aspect of human adaptation though. Like I said before, there is the Homo demon, but there is more. There is the Homo favor, the craftsmen, those insightful and highly intelligent humans that help make the world a little easier in their inventions. Homo religios, the people who have a relationship with an ideal or thought that they highly believe in, and the Homo luquens, linguists, the anthropologists, and the Homo ludens, those who supposedly play by connecting people together, not a purpose, but a pursuit nonetheless. The last one could describe Sam with this pursuit west, and for what purpose? To expand the chiral network. I earlier said it was a contradiction. You will now know why. The chiral network is a bridges communication system providing coverage of established strands. Strands are cords to the beaches, allowing communication between the real world and the world of the dead. It allows the chiral network to use the beach to send and receive messages across the continental UCA. It is assessed by bridges operatives with an engraved Cupid necklace. This necklace contains a high amount of beryllium and a series of tag-engraved physics equations with all the necessary security and operation protocols to integrate the terminals. This makes all strand points accessible to those bearing the required equations. All in all, the chiral network allows instantaneous data transfer throughout its nodes, seemingly due to its time alterations properties. Connected nodes are capable of running chirograms, syncing holograms of participating people into a single perceived space, thus improving face-to-face communication. All stored data is instantly shareable throughout the network, further linking the cities together, and also questioning the aspect of privacy, which is potentially only brought up by the people wanting you, the player, to expand. Die Hardman, another character, remarks that some see the chiral network to be perceived as a symbiotic surveillance system. However, he notes it to be something of a spiritual successor of the internet, which is not hard to imagine. However, the worrying factor is, if you recall, is that chiralium can be considered as radioactive and harmful to humans. Therefore, theories have risen, such as chiralium is taking energy from the beach, from the other side, and might perhaps be increasing the likelihood of people's extinction through the overexposure of chiralium in the timefall, thus making it harder to go outside. With a reliance on what the chiral network can do, it makes it into a spiraling circle that will eventually have a bad ending. With this circle of slow destruction, the chiral network would potentially be bringing people together temporarily, but in the long run, it could be shortening their lives. It can be perceived that many characters find the chiral network to be a good thing, whilst others are either unsure or want nothing to do with it. If you link it to our reality, many things can come to light, such as the history of chiralium could be a reference to radioactive substances, such as nuclear power, and the history of Japan's unfortunate incidences with 2 nuclear bombs and the explosion of the nuclear power plant in Fukushima. There are many references that could be made between this reality and the universe of the game. However, it can be understood that there are a main message that Kojima wanted to portray in the story and the history created in this game. Here is a quote. "I'm only doing Instagram and Twitter on social media right now. 20 years ago, when I wrote Metal Gear Solid, the internet wasn't in full bloom. Back then, I was predicting what the negative consequences of the internet could be. Together, we are so close together on social media. It's 24 hours a day, in real time. It may be too close. We're so close on social media nowadays that people are wearing a mask saying whatever they want. Because we've become so close, people are saying negative things so easily. We communicate without considering others, and a lot of that has to do with new technology. The original meaning of communication is to care and feel for others. Technology and the internet has sort of carried us in the wrong direction. So, in Death Stranding, with the indirect connections that the player has, I want people to rethink what connection, and to think about others, is. Communication. Indirect and wholesome for a player that might perhaps feel alone in what others might call a walking simulator. But I feel it's so much more than that. There is a connection that cannot be denied. For some, it can span both time and into other worlds. There's always a connection of the afterlife or the moments before, and the worrying thoughts about how our technology in our reality has a hold on us as consumers. How many others, with their isolation, might feel alone, fearful of death, and the unknown, to finally be able to connect with those that feel the same? So many thoughts, that Kojima and his team have had that has defined an outstanding and beautifully imagined universe that is Death Stranding. The journey west for those alive or dead is a path each of us will take eventually in our lives. And within this game, it portrays each emotion about the connection that we can have in this life or the next. Perhaps death is not the end? Who knows? If you enjoyed what was said, please follow me on Anchor and Spotify. Be kept in the loop for new episodes by following my Instagram. And if you have any questions, email me at 2takespodcast1@gmail.com. And as always, thanks for listening.